Om Sang Saraswati Namaha. Namaste. Namaste, everyone. On page 285, chapter 12, Dvadasho Adhyaya Dhyanam Om Vidyudamastaprabham Mrigapati Skandastitam Vishanam Kanyabhiki Kavalaketa Vilasadasta Virasevitam Astrishtaka Gadasi Keta Vishikam Shapam Gunam Tarjanim Vibramanamanatmikam Sasidaram Durgam Trinetram Bhaje Om Devyuvacham Ebikistabhishta Bandhityam Stoshateya Samakitam Tashyaham Sakalam Badam Nasayisyam Yasansakam Madhukaitva Nasham Cha Mahishasthura Gatanam Kirta Yishyanti Tadvad Padam Shumbadi Shumbayaho Ashtamyam Chataturdashyam Navamyam Chaikatetasa Soshyanti Chaibaki Bhaktya Mama Mahatmyam Uttamam Natesham Duskritam Chanted Duskritota Nachapada Bhavishyati Nadaridryam Natredeshyaya Vihotanam Satruto Nabaikantasyam Dasyuto Banadrajata Nasastra Nala Luto Yogat Kadachit Sambhavishyati Tasman Mamita Mahatmyam Patitavyam Samakite Srotavyam Sada Bhaktya Parang Swasya Gandanditat Upasarga Dashesanstu Mahamari Samubhavan Tatatrivida Mupatam Mahatyam Shamakim Bhavan Yatri Tatpatyate Samyam Nityama Yatane Mama Sadana Tadimokshami Samnidhyam Tatra Mestitam Bali Pradane Pujayam Agni Karye Makhotsabe Sarva Mamai Tacharitam Ucharyam Sratyame Bacham Janata Bapi Bali Pujan Tatakritam Pratishisyamyaham Pritya Bani Homam Tatakritam Sharakale Mahapuja Kriyate Jachasparshiki Tasyam Amita Mahatyam Sruta Bhakti Samandita Sarvabhada Vinyamukto Dhanadanya Sutandita Manushya Maimat Prasadena Bhavishyati Na Sanchakaha Shrutva Mamita Mahatyam Tata Chupataka Subha Parakramam Chayudeshu Jayate Nirbhayo Puban Ripabha Sanchakanyanti Kalyanam Chopapadyate Nandate Chakulam Punsam Mapyam Mama Srinbatam Santi Kamani Sarvatra Tata Dusvapna Darshane Grahapi Dashu Chograsu Mapyam Srinukan Mama Upasarga Shamanyanti Grahapir Rashtu Daruna Dusvapnam Nantabrinishtam Susvapnam Upajayate Balagrahabi Bhutanam Balanam Santikarakam Sagata Vede Chamrinam Maitri Karuna Muttabam Viritam Namaste Shanam Balahani Karamparam Rakshobhuta Pisachanam Patana Devanasanam Sarvam Mamaitam Mahatmyam Mamasanidhi Karakam Pashupushpurkya Dupoishcha Ganda Dipokista Tatamui Vipana Bojanair Homayir Rokshaniyar Mahir Nisham Ayishta Bividir Bogir Pradanir Vatsarinaya Priti me kriyate sasmin Sukritu charite sutae Sutangarati papadi Tatarukyam pakachati Rakshan karoti bhutebhyo Janmanang kirtanang mama Yudeshu charitanyane Dustadotyani paranam Tasmin trute boirikritam Vayam punsam najayate Yushma bhistu takyo yasya Yasya pramarshi bhikrita Brahmana chakritastastu Prayachanti shubham matim Oranye prantare bapi Dabhagni papri parita Tasyubri babita sunye Grihito bapi satubhi Singha vyagradu yatova Paniba panindastibi Ragyo krudena chadyato Vado bandagato piba Agurnito babatena Stutasti bhote mahanave Patatsu sapti sastreshu Sangrame brisadarane Sarva bhavasu korasu Vedama vyarti topiba Smaran mami tacharitam Namo cheta shankatad Mama prabhava bhatsingadya Dasavo eridastata Duradeva palayante Smarastaritam nama Rishiruvacha Ityutvasa bhagavati Chandika chandivikrama Pashyatame badevanam Tvadivantaryadiyata Tepi devan yiratanka Swadhikaranyatapara Yagyabaga pujasame Chakarvini rataraka Doityasya devyaniyate Shumede baripoyadi Jagadidamsini tasmin Mahogre tulya bikrame Nushumbe chamahadirge Shesha patalamayu Ebang bhagavati devi sa Nipyapi punah punah Sambuya kurate bhupa Jagata paripalanam Tayitan boyate vishwam Seva vishwam pratsuyate Sayachita tabiganam Tushtaridin prakachate Yaptam tayatat saklam Brahmandam Madhujeshwara Mahakalya Mahakale Mahamari Surupaka Saiva Kale Mahamari Saiva Sristi Bhavatyaja Stitin Karoti Bhutana Saiva Kale Sanatani Baba Kale Nrinam Saiva Lakshmir Bidhi Pratabihe Saiva Bhabe Tata Lakshmir Vinasayo Pajayate Stuta Sabujita Pushpir Gupakanta Bistata Tadati Bitram Putranuscha Patindare Gating Shvam Om. Let's return to page 285, chapter 12, and now to meditation. I meditate upon the three-eyed goddess Durga, the reliever of difficulties. The luster of her beautiful body is like lightning. She sits upon the shoulders of a lion and appears very fierce. Many maidens holding the double-edged sword and shield in their hands are standing at readiness to serve her. She holds in her hands the discus, the club, the double-edged sword, the shield, arrow, bow, net, and the mudra connecting the thumb and the pointer finger with the other three fingers extended upwards, indicating the granting of wisdom. Gyan Mudra. Her intrinsic nature is fire, and upon her head she wears the moon as a crown. So remember, devotion is the ornament for all the gods, the highest ornament. And Om, the goddess said, this chapter is called the Phalshruti, the recitation of the fruits of reciting the Chandi Path. What's going to happen to us if we sing this? If we read this and study this, if we listen to this, what will happen? Whoever will constantly recite these hymns of praise to me with a concentrated mind, I shall without doubt put an end to their every difficulty. Whoever will sing of the destruction of too much and too little, the slaughter of the great ego, and the death of self-conceit and self-deprecation. Whoever, with one-pointed attention and devotion, will listen to this presentation of my excellent glory on the 8th, 14th, and 9th days of the lunar fortnight, today's the 14th, to them, neither will anything bad occur, nor will misfortunes arise out of inauspicious events. Neither will poverty arise, nor separation from beloved ones. No fear will ever come to them from enemies, robbers, or kings, nor from weapon, fire, or floods. Therefore, this presentation of my glory should be recited with full attention and should be constantly listened to with devotion, as it is one's path, one's own path to self-realization. This presentation of my glory is the great destroyer of all disturbances. This presentation is a destroyer of all disturbances. It's probably the best one. Will bring peace to the threefold nature of confusion, either your physical, mental, and spiritual confusions, or myself and others and acts of God, or any of the three kinds of confusion that you want to list. You got lots of choices. I shall never forsake the place where this narration is well recited. There my presence will constantly abide. Always stay in the Devi Mandir, Mom, please. We are praying to you. Always sanctify this community and sanctify this family, and always stay in the center of our lives. When offerings are made during worship, in the fire sacrifice at great festive occasions, this presentation of my glory should be completely recited and listened to. That means every time there's a great fire sacrifice, if there's a festive occasion, you can sing the Chandi Path on every festive occasion. I will accept with love all acts of worship, offerings, and fire sacrifices, whether performed with understanding or without it. Even if you don't know what you're saying, if you repeat all the words, He will accept it. She'll be pleased. Because of our devotion, we are making the effort. And as we make a greater effort, She will bless us with greater understanding. And as the understanding grows, the effort grows. And as the effort grows, the understanding grows. And she'll accept it all and bless us. So when your child came home from kindergarten class and showed you the picture that she drew in the classroom, you didn't say, "You dummy, you didn't do it right." You said, "Oh, this is beautiful. We'll put it on the refrigerator and let everyone see it." Don't be afraid because you don't understand it completely. You'll make a mistake and offend her. She's our mother. We're trying to the best of our capacity. She's understanding and compassionate. She's going to inspire us and encourage us and say, "Hey, go for it, kids." She's not going to say, "Dummy, go to the back of the class." In the great periods when yearly worship is performed in the autumn season, this presentation of my glory should be listened to with devotion and full attention. That means the Sharat Navaratri. That's the Navaratri in the month of Ashwin. Definitely, you got to do that one. But if you're really astute, you want to do Ashvin and Chaitra. There's one in March and April, and one in September, October. So those are two. And if you're really gung-ho, you'll want to observe 4. There's Magh, Chaitra, Ashar, and Ashvin. Magh is in January, Chaitra in April, Ashar in July, and Ashwin in October. Every 3 months, there's another Navaratri. Or, if you're really, really into it, a Dharma bum like these guys who live in the Devi Mandir, you can do Navaratri in any Paksh, either beginning on Pratipad and ending on Navami, or be beginning on Shashti, the 6th day, and ending on the full moon or on Amavasya. That works too. There is no time which is inappropriate for worship. Any time is the proper time. People will become liberated from all troubles, and without doubt will be blessed with wealth, food, and beautiful children. Listening to this presentation of my glories, of my auspicious manifestations, of my heroic conquering in the battles, people become fearless. We know that Mom is there to protect us. What can happen to me? I know I'm traveling with the Divine Mother. How am I going to get in trouble? Enemies perish. Welfare is generated for those who listen to this narrative of my glories, and their families rejoice. They do, ultimately. They may put some obstacles in the beginning, but ultimately their families rejoice. Let my glories be heard everywhere. In functions of peace upon seeing a bad dream, or to alleviate the adverse effects of the positions of the planets. If some astrologer, and any astrologer worth his salt, is going to look at your hand and say, oh, you better do this puja. That'll cost you. You need a ring. That'll cost you. You need a stone for your ring. That'll cost you. If he's in the astrology business, he's going to find the problem. So, for everyone who has any malevolent planets in their chart, rather than paying the astrologer, sit down and recite the Chandi Path. Do you know it says that the rishis and the munis get their siddhis from tapasya. The gods get their siddhis from drinking the nectar of devotion. And the asuras get their siddhis from stones and amulets and other kinds of external devices. So if you have something inappropriate in your chart that you want to correct, sit down and do tapasya. And you'll get you'll get the siddhi of a rishi. You'll get the attainment of an attained one, of a muni, of a wise one, rather than trying to buy stones and rings and amulets and other things. Troubles subside, as well as the afflicting influences of the planets. The bad dream seen by people becomes a good dream. It pacifies children affected by the existence of adverse planetary influences. And it is the best cause of friendship when associations of people have divided. It annihilates the strength of evildoers, and its recitation destroys demons, ghosts, and ungodly spirits. This entire narration of my glories will make my presence manifest. I underlined that. It's true. This entire narration of my glories makes my presence manifest. And there's nothing like being in the presence that are manifest. With the same satisfaction with which I received 1 year of worship, with offerings of your animalistic nature, flowers, objects of value, incense, perfumes, lights, the feeding of wise people, fire offerings, daily sprinkling of consecrated waters, and the offering of other objects of enjoyment, similar is my gratification for those who, with love for me, recite this excellent narration or listen to it but once. One recitation or listening to the Chandi Path recited is equal to the value of 1 year of worship, of puja. But you got to perform the puja before you sing the Chandi Path. Hearing removes sin and gives freedom from infirmities. And that's mostly mental infirmities. Because we're not worried about the body. It'll take care of that too. All infirmities. Freedom from infirmities. Those who sing the praise of my births are protected from evil spirits, and the narration of my heroic acts in battle renders evil confusions without strength. They're done for. No match for the mother. After listening to this, fear of enemies is lost. The hymns of praise made by you gods and seers of divinity, all of you, and by the creative capacity, and others as well, will bestow auspicious thoughts. On a lonely path in the forest, surrounded by a raging fire, encircled by robbers in a lonely place, captured by enemies, pursued by a lion, tiger, or wild elephants in the jungle, or under orders of an angry king, imprisoned or condemned to death, or tossed about by turbulent winds in a boat on the great sea, or in an intensive battle under heavy fire from opposing weapons, in all terrible afflictions and moments of distress, people who remember my glory will be freed from calamity and anguish. By my power, lions, robbers, and enemies flee to a distance from one who remembers this narration of my glory. I'd like to tell a story. One day I was traveling by foot from Bilashpur to Manali in Himachal Pradesh. And I used to get lost very frequently. I was going up into the mountains very high, and I had to cross a glacier through which there was a 2-meter wide pass called the Chotabubu. Chotabubu, the small pass. And it really was a boo-boo. And it was, I wound up in mountains, and I always traveled barefoot. And I took I was walking by myself, and I was on top of a glacier, and there was no path. And then I crossed 2/3 of the glacier, and I got to the last part of the glacier, and there was a bunch of thorns that were frozen solid in the ice. And there was no way to avoid them. And by the time I crossed the last third of the glacier, my feet were just cut to pieces. And it was getting to be dusk, and it was getting dark. And I crossed the glacier, and I looked down, and obviously I was in the wrong place. The ice went down maybe 100 feet or so, and then it started a waterfall, and it was straight down. And then at the bottom there was a little canyon. So it formed a little creek and then a river, and I could see down there was nothing. Obviously I was in the wrong place. Well, I wasn't going to try to climb down the waterfall in the night. So I sat up there huddling and singing all night. And at the first break of dawn, I was tired, I was cold, I was hungry, I was miserable, and my feet hurt like crazy. And I started to climb down the waterfall, rock to rock. And it must have been mid-morning when I had made my descent. Thank God I didn't slip and I didn't fall, and I was in one piece. That in itself was a remarkable miracle. But the story goes on. I climbed down to this where the ice was melting, and I followed the melting ice, and then it made us a little creek and a little stream and a brook, and then it started becoming a river. And when it became a river, there was a footpath along the side. And I walked down the footpath, and it must have been noon. Sun was coming up. I was getting a little warmer, and there was light inside. It was, because in the steep canyons of the Himalayas, when the sun comes, it takes a long time for the sun. It has to be directly overhead. You get direct sunlight for about 2 or 3 hours, and then it's gone. Then you're back in the shadows again. Well, it was sort of like getting to be midday, and I saw the most beautiful sight I could imagine. A man was walking up the path. And I kept walking. I got inspired. I walked a little faster. He was walking up the path. And he got to about 50 feet away from me. And I said, "Namaste, namaste." And he looked up at me, and he looked me straight in the face, and he shouted out, "Boot!" And he turned around and ran away. It means a ghost. My heart sank. I thought he was my savior. And he thought I was a ghost. He'd never seen anyone so white. And where was I coming from? How did I get there? I must have been a ghost. So I continued walking down the trail, not knowing what I knew I couldn't go back up, so I had no idea what I was going to find. And a couple of hours went by, and there were about a dozen men walking up the trail, all carrying pitchforks and axes and any kind of tool that they had in their barns. And they all came walking up, and they got to about 20 feet from me, and they stopped. And I sat down and started singing the Devi Shukta. Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Vishnu Mayeti Shabditam Namastasye 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 Namo Namaha. And I saw amongst them they were a little bit confused. So I kept singing. And they sent one of their men back to the next village down to bring the school teacher, because he spoke Hindi. None of them spoke Hindi. They all spoke Pahari, a mountain language. Some dialect and some isolated canyon. Well, I was singing for about another 2 hours or so. I was singing every verse of Sanskrit that I could remember under those. I wasn't going to stop singing for the life of me, because I remembered, encircled by robbers in a lonely place, captured by enemies, pursued by a lion, tiger, or wild elephants in the jungle, under orders of an angry king, imprisoned or condemned to death, or tossed about by turbulent winds in a boat on the great sea, or in an intensive battle under a heavy fire from opposing weapons, in all terrible afflictions and moments of distress. People who remember my glory will be freed from calamity and anguish. By my power, lions, robbers, and enemies flee to a distance from one who remembers this narration of my glory. And then the school teacher came. And he was really brave, and he stepped to the front of all the men standing there, his army with weapons at the ready. And I said to him, Namaste, आप हिंदी बोल सकते हैं? Can you speak in Hindi? And he said, yes. And he said, what are you doing here? And I said, I'm worshiping the Divine Mother in nature, and I lost my path. He said, how did you get here? And I said, down the waterfall. And he said, what were you singing? And I was singing from the Chandi Path. And he turned around to the men and said, he's not a ghost. He's a rishi. He's a sadhu. It's our duty to help him out. Look at his feet are cut and wounded. He looks like he's tired and hungry and cold. Let's carry him to the village. Which they did. They carried me to the village. They made a little litter, and they had a chair on it, and they carried me, and I sat down, and they carried me to the village, and they cooked a beautiful feast and gave me new clothes and a hot bath, and I stayed there for 2 weeks singing the Chandi Path. By my power, lions, robbers, and enemies flee to a distance from one who remembers this narration of my glory. And there she said, thus having spoken, the Supreme, she who tears apart thought of fierce prowess, that's Chandi, disappeared there from where, while all the gods were watching her. Just as we were watching her, she just disappeared. And then we saw the Murti again. She just dissolved into the image of our worship. And that means that we can't keep her in the forefront all the time. But even a glimpse, even a glance is such a joy, such a privilege. We get to see her even for an instant. It's such a privilege. It's worth it. And then she dissolves. And then we see the Murti again. And thank the Murti for allowing her to come through the Murti and make her presence manifest to us. Just while we were watching her, while all the gods watched her, their enemies having been slain, all the gods were freed from disruption of the mind. They all began to enjoy their shares of sacrifices and to exercise their divinity, their divine authority as before. When those thoughts, enemies of the gods, the afflictors of the world, self-conceit, greatly fierce and unequaled prowess, and self-deprecation of great valor were slain in battle by the goddess, the remaining thoughts entered the lower worlds. Thus, O king, the supreme goddess, although eternal, again and again manifests herself for the protection of the worlds. The universe is deluded by her, and it is she who creates the universe. Satisfied by prayer, she grants wisdom and perfection. O sovereign of thinking beings, I'm addressing you, O king, and you, O king, and you, queen. O sovereign of thinking beings, the entire cosmos is pervaded by her, the great goddess, who is the intrinsic nature of the great remover of darkness and the great destroyer. She is Mahakali and she is Mahakal. Sometimes she is the great destroyer. Sometimes she, the unborn, becomes the creation. Sometimes she, the eternal, preserves all beings. Srishti Sthiti Loy, she creates, protects, and transforms all that is. During the time of welfare, she is the goddess of true wealth in the homes of men, granting increase. She's Lakshmi if you're in a good space. In times of misfortune, she herself is calamity and brings about ruin. Praised and worshipped with flowers, perfumes, incense, and other offerings, she bestows understanding, wealth, offspring, and a beautiful mind in the way of truth to wisdom. Your mind is fixed in Dharma, the ideals of perfection in the way of truth to wisdom. That also is her blessing. Om. Are there any questions? Yes, please, Srini.
Swamiji, in verse 20, they talk about, the poet talks about offerings of your animalistic nature.
Yes.
What are these offerings, Swamiji?
Some people like to slay an animal. I like to slay my animalism. My animalism consists of my pashu bhav, the selfish nature that thinks that I'm the most important person in my life. Do you ever confront such an individual? When I confront the individual that says, I am the most important person in my life, that to me is my animalistic nature. He condones any behavior which brings success. He allows me to stretch the truth a little bit or color it a shade or two to suit my selfish needs. That selfish animal guy within me is the one I want to sacrifice. And that's the whole purpose of this sadhana for me. Are there other questions?
Question from Ambika from New Jersey.
Namaste, Ambika Ma.
Namaste, Swamiji. We are told to recite or listen with concentration and full devotion. In verse 11, we are told it doesn't matter whether or not we understand it. Is it possible to really have full concentration without understanding? Thank you.
Yes. Ambika, when we're beginning, it's even enough just to be able to pronounce every syllable in every line. And that takes a lot of concentration. Sometimes we wish we had more concentration so our tongue will not stumble so much. Now, the more we study, the more we understand, the easier it is to comprehend as we're saying it. This is the drama of me. And generally speaking, it is my animalistic nature which drives me astray and says, oh, forget the text. Let's look at this daydream. Look how nice self-conceit is in that daydream. Look how bad self-deprecation is in that daydream. So the purpose of concentrating is to exclude self-conceit and self-deprecation and all the daydreams. So the more we chant, the more we will understand. The more we understand, the easier it is to focus on the story of what's happening to me. Ambika, this is the story of my personal transformation for each of us. The story of each and every one of our personal transformations. until we become the rishi of the hymn, who in the next chapter is going to say, hey, Mom, I got you. What else do I need? Just give me the wisdom by which I can keep you with me all the time and keep myself with you all the time.
Another question from Ambika, verse 20 to 22.
Yes, Ambika.
Please forgive me, but other than the consideration of time, why do we recite the shortened version of the Chandi Path? Will the benefits still be the same?
Yes, the benefits are the same. They're not exactly the same. No, you don't get the same benefit from chanting a 2-hour Chandi Path as you do from chanting a 3.5-hour Chandi Path. It should take you 3.5 hours to go through the book cover to cover, or 3 hours and 45 minutes. It'll take you 2 hours and 2 hours to go through the whole book. 2.5 hours to do the whole book, and 1 hour and 45 minutes to do just the 700 verses. The reason we do it, 700 verses, is because you can't sit long enough to sing the whole Chandi. And there are very many other people who cannot sit long enough. However, as we go into the graduate classes and we read the Samputs, which we studied in the book on pronunciation in Samputs, we find that there are ways to make the Chandi Path 5 hours long, 7 hours long, 10 hours long. Now, when you can sit 3.5 or 4 hours at a time, please let me know and I'll tell you how you can expand it longer. Yes, Gauri.
Swamiji, is there something that we can do physically to bring the mind back when it wanders and when it keeps wandering? Because sometimes just saying, okay, I'm not going to think about that anymore, I'm going to concentrate, doesn't necessarily do it.
No, then all you can do is call, Ma! Ma! I'm here to be with you. I'm on your time now. Please bring my mind back to be here with you too. That's all. You can pray to her fervently, with greater intensity. Mother, please, I have control over my knees. I don't have control over my mind. You gave that ego the boon. He controls the mind. Now, I'm promising you I'm not going to move my knees. It's up to you to make my mind stay here too. If you can direct your thought processes back to that way of thinking, automatically you'll come back. If you can remember those thoughts, those are the positive thoughts which will negate the negative. They'll expel the negative. Ma, I don't have capacity to control the mind. It's running away with me. Please bring it back.
Question from Morning Song from Santa Rosa.
Namaste, Morning Song.
Namaste, Swamiji. Is the way Mother removes all obstacles, afflictions and other bad things by our chanting the Chandi is because through this practice we become in alignment with her, and by knowing our true nature, none of these things can be of any consequence to us.
Absolutely, Morning Song. That is just the reason. Thank you very much. You expressed it so nicely. That's just the reason. When we are aligned with her and at one with her and attuned to her, then of what consequence are robbers, lions, tigers, or wild elephants in the jungle? I got you, Mom.
Swamiji, question from Nanda from San Jose.
Yes, Nanda, Ma.
Pranam, Swamiji. With all the benefits the goddess showers upon the devotee, please tell us why it is not okay to ask her for material benefits.
Oh, it's certainly okay. It's certainly okay for you to ask her for material benefits. But what happens when she grants that wish? Don't you have to come back again and ask her for something else? Will you be satisfied with that? If I had one chance to ask her for something, I'm going to ask her for something that is not transitory. The material benefit that you will get but if she grants it, it's not going to stay. It's not permanent. I want a permanent solution. My only permanent solution after all these years of study for myself, Nandama, I want devotion. If I can stay devoted, I can be in love with whatever I'm doing. If I love whatever I'm doing, I love wherever I'm at. If I love wherever I'm at, I love with whomever I'm with. If I love wherever I'm at, whomever I'm with, I love whatever is going on. Life's a blast. What do I want to run from? What more do I need in this material world? I'm sure it will come. If she brings me that far, then what more do I need? Why ask her? For it's like going to a millionaire and saying, could I borrow a buck? Hey, buddy, can you spare a dime? You go to the billionaire and say, hey, can I have a dime for a cup of coffee? Or it used to be a dime, I remember. I remember when it was a nickel for coffee and a donut.
Question from Kumari from Valley.
Namaste, Kumari Ma.
What does it mean for the goddess to accept our worship? Does she ever reject our worship? And what does it mean if she rejects it?
You don't want to know. Yes, Kumari, she accepts our worship when our intentions are pure. And she rejects our worship when we have impure or selfish motivation. And when she rejects our worship, it says a little later, it produces the effect of a voice crying in the wilderness. Calling in the wilderness, it's of no effect whatsoever. So we want to have pure intentions and pure motivation. This Chandi Path is a manual for personal transformation. It's a scripture of self-transformation. And it allows us the privilege of scrubbing away all the iniquities and getting rid of the negativities and getting rid of all that egoism that we're carrying around like a big burden and putting it down, become children of the Divine Mother. And if we have that attitude, she accepts our worship without a doubt. And if we don't have that attitude, if we have the attitude, you come down from that altar and serve me, I want to be the boss yogi on the block, I'm going to tell the Shakti of the universe what to do. I'm going to eliminate, eradicate your problems through my devotion. If we have that idea, if we have that attitude, she rejects that attitude. She rejects that worship. She does not accept that worship. She may grant boons to the person who is trying to free his or her own self from bonds of karma. But she doesn't accept that worship.
Swamiji, on the one hand it says that if you listen or chant even once the Chandi Path, all these fruits will accrue to us.
Yes.
On the other hand, we've been talking every day about how we have to make a priority, do sadhana, and we are aspiring to sit as long as possible in the asana. Can you help me?
Yes, I can. I hope. In order to listen to it once, and really listen to it, and not just hear the words or hear the sounds, but really deeply, intuitively grok the essence of the Chandi as it is being spoken. All it takes is once. Just like the Rishi said to his kid, you could have told the king to say it once, Ram's name. But now, in order for us to get to that point where we can hear it once, we need to prepare ourselves. Someone once asked Srima, Swami Vivekananda was touched by Ramakrishna and got enlightenment just by the touch. Would you please touch me in the same way? And Srimad said, I certainly will. But first you become Swami Vivekananda. The constant recitation of the Chandi Path, this tapasya, this sadhana, this purification process that we are aspiring to go through will turn us into the individual that is ready to hear it once. And that's why. You can't just listen to the sounds coming out of the mouths of people who are trying to learn it. You got to say it or listen to it yourself, inside.
Swamiji, a question from Nanda. In reference to your story, would singing the Devi Suktam always be a good choice whenever you feel the need to connect or remember our Divine Mother? Are there other verses to sing as well?
Absolutely, there are other verses. I've got 700 of them right here in front of me. Choose any one. I was choosing in that circumstance something that hopefully would be understandable to the people who were confronting me. That they would understand at least Namastashi, 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 Namo Namah. They would understand that. They would say, hey, he's bowing in our direction. He's singing something in Sanskrit. We don't know what he's doing. Let's go find out. That was my aspiration. So that was how I chose those verses.
Swamiji, the chapter mentions ghosts and inimical forces. In the Chandi, you have translated asuras as thoughts. Do negative and inimical beings, other than our thoughts, actually exist?
Yes, they do. They exist in my thoughts. They exist. Let's see. What verse is that? Here, it says demons, ghosts, and ungodly spirits is what it says in verse 19. I don't see inimical beings. I didn't see that one. So this is a literal translation of Bhut, Pishach, and Bhut Pisachanam, Ityadi, Bhut Pisacha Ityadi, in verse 19, is what it means, etc. Ghosts and demons and etc. So yes, these are all incorporeal spirits that are perplexing us. They actually exist inside our brains, inside our minds, inside our thoughts. Whether they or not they have external existence as well is of absolutely no consequence to us. The point of this verse is that they are here and they are presenting obstacles to us. I have this debate raging inside my brain. Someone is taking the positive side and someone is taking the negative side. I am constantly evildoers. Someone is saying to me, do evil. Join us. Be evil. So yes, these are actual entities that are making obstacles in our path.
Swamiji, in verse 8, it talks about three types of confusion: physical, mental, and spiritual. I thought all confusion is from our mind. What are physical and spiritual confusion?
Well, we have physical obstacles. Obviously, physical limitations which confer confusion upon us. For example, I have a pain in my leg and I can't sit in the asana. That makes a physical limitation. I have a confusion about it. Shall I not sit in the asana and heal the pain, or shall I sit in the asana regardless of the pain? And you know what I chose. I have mental obstructions, limitations, with confusions. Those are obvious. I have spiritual confusions. What is my dharma in this circumstance? What is my, it's called dharma shankat, a debate between two conflicting dharmas, two conflicting ideals of perfection. I have one ideal of perfection, to be a sannyasi, and to be totally unattached and renounced and totally absorbed in worship of the Divine Mother. And I have a second ideal of perfection as the mahanta of an ashram, to be totally engaged in providing an environment for sadhus to come to, and administering that environment to maintain its conducive nature, so that sadhus can really derive the greatest benefit from our ashram. That's a dharma shankat. There's a constant battle, a spiritual battle within me, that says that, hey, shall I be the administrator of the ashram, or shall I be a footloose and fancy-free sannyasi? Constantly. Do you know mothers are mothers because they have children? And sannyasis are sannyasis because they don't. There's a dharma shankat. This is a confusion of dharmas, a conflict of dharmas. And we have these various ideals of perfection that we have to reconcile. All of us do. Your parents would like you to be a professor, and the professor would like to be a sadhu. The sadhu would like to be a businessman. The businessman would like to be a sadhu. Everybody is dealing with the conflict between the reconciliation between the conflicting spiritual values. So these are the spiritual confusions. Huh? Om Sam Saraswati Namaha. Namaste.